Kim Dae-ho stood in the Great Hall of Nexus Prime, watching the alien delegates take their seats. The crystal walls sparkled with strange light, making everything look like a dream. But this was no dream. This was the day that would decide humanity's fate. The Galactic Council had called this emergency meeting. 12 alien species sat in a circle around the center of the room. Their faces were hard to read. Some looked like giant lizards, others glowed like living stars. A few had too many eyes or arms that moved in ways that made Kim feel sick. Kim wore his best diplomatic uniform. The blue fabric felt heavy on his shoulders. Behind him stood Park So-min, Earth's military officer. Her hand rested near her weapon, though Kim had told her many times that fighting would not help them today. Near the back of the room, Lee Tae-woo sat with his datapad. The young scientist had been studying alien technology for years. His eyes moved quickly as he recorded everything he saw. Chancellor Krextar rose from his seat. The large reptilian alien's scales were dark green, almost black. When he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding stone. "We gather today to discuss the human problem," Krextar said. His words echoed in the hall. "For too long, we have watched these creatures spread across our galaxy like a disease." Kim felt his heart sink. He had hoped for a fair discussion. Instead, the trial had already begun. "Humans have been part of the galactic community for only 300 years, Kim said, stepping forward. "We have followed all treaties. We have paid our taxes. We have caused no wars." A being made of pure light flickered brighter. High Sage Zethmol spoke without moving what might have been a mouth. The voice came from everywhere at once. "You speak of peace, but we see only chaos," the energy being said. "Your species learns too fast. You copy our technology and make it better. You build cities on worlds we thought impossible to live on." "Is learning a crime?" Kim asked. "Is growing and building against galactic law?" The insect-like delegate from the Chitrak clicked its mandibles together. "Your population grows without control. 300 years ago, humans lived on one world. Now you claim 57 planets and over 200 space stations." Park So-min stepped closer to Kim. She whispered in his ear, "They're afraid of us. They want us gone before we become too strong." Kim nodded slightly. He had suspected this for months. Reports from human colonies had mentioned strange alien ships watching them from far away. Trade deals that had once been easy were now filled with new rules that only applied to humans. "We propose a solution," Krextar announced. His claws scraped against the crystal floor as he moved. "All humans must return to their home system within 30 standard days. Any human found outside the Sol system after this deadline will be considered an enemy of the galactic peace." The hall fell silent. Kim felt like someone had hit him in the chest. Around the circle, alien faces showed no emotion. Only the Etherian delegate seemed uncomfortable, shifting in his chair. "You cannot be serious," Kim said. "There are over 2 billion humans living in the colonies. 30 days is not enough time to move so many people. Then you should have thought of that before you spread so far," replied a slug-like creature with purple skin. The vote has already been taken. 11 species agree. Only the Etherians chose not to vote. Kim looked at the pale, ghostly Etherian. The peaceful species had always been kind to humans, but even they would not help now. "This is wrong," Kim said, his voice getting louder. "We have done nothing to deserve this treatment." "You exist," said Krextar simply. "That is enough." "Park." Somin's hand moved toward her weapon, but Kim grabbed her wrist. Fighting here would only make things worse for all humans. Lee Tae-woo was busy with his data pad. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. Kim wondered what the scientist was doing, but he could not ask now. "If we agree to leave," Kim said, slowly, "what guarantee do we have that you will leave Earth alone?" "Earth will be safe as long as humans stay there," Zethmol replied. "We will place a barrier around your system. Nothing will get in or out without our permission." Kim felt trapped. If humans refused to leave, the aliens would probably attack the colonies. Billions would die, but if they agreed, humanity would be prisoners in their own home system. "We need more time," Kim said. 6 months at least. 30 days, Krextar repeated. "The decision is final." Around the hall, alien delegates began to stand. The meeting was over. Kim had failed. As the aliens filed out, the Etherian delegate approached Kim. The ghostly being moved without making any sound. "I am sorry," the Etherian whispered. "My people wanted to help, but we are few and weak. The others threatened us if we interfered." "Thank you for trying," Kim replied. The Etherian looked around nervously, then leaned closer. "Not all of us agree with this decision. Remember that in the dark times ahead." Before Kim could ask what that meant, the Etherian faded away like mist. Park So-min put her hand on Kim's shoulder. "We need to get back to Earth. The evacuation will be massive." Kim nodded. His mind was already working on the logistics. 2 billion people, thousands of ships. 30 days. Lee Tae-woo closed his data pad and joined them. "I managed to download their entire technology database," he whispered. "If we're going to be exiled, at least we'll have something to work with." Kim stared at the young scientist. "You did what?" "Their security was focused on keeping people out, not keeping information in," Lee explained. "I've been working on this for months. Everything they know about faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, shield technology, it's all here." For the first time since the meeting began, Kim felt a spark of hope. If humanity had to leave, they would not go empty-handed. The 3 humans walked out of the crystal hall together. Above them, alien ships filled the sky. Soon those same ships would be watching to make sure every human left the galaxy. But as they boarded their small diplomatic ship, Kim was already thinking about the future. The aliens thought they were sending humanity into exile. They thought they were solving their human problem forever. They had no idea what they had just started. 50 years had passed since the Great Evacuation. Choi Min-jun stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, looking out at the invisible barrier that trapped humanity in their home system. The energy field could not be seen, but every human knew it was there. Ships that tried to cross it simply vanished in bright flashes of light. Min Jun was the grandson of Kim Dae-ho, the diplomat who had tried to save humanity at that final meeting. The old man had died 10 years ago, but not before telling his grandson everything about that terrible day. "Sir, the morning briefing is ready," said his aide, a young woman named Yu Jin-ah. Min Jun turned away from the window. As Earth's prime minister, he had many duties, but all of them pointed toward the same goal, preparing for the day when humanity would be free again. The conference room was full of important people. Admiral Yoon Hye-jin sat at one end of the table, her uniform covered with medals from training exercises. She commanded the largest military force in human history, though it was hidden from alien eyes. Next to her sat Bae Sung-ho, the lead scientist of Project Phoenix. The man's hair had turned gray from years of working in underground laboratories. His eyes were bright with the excitement of discovery. "Report on the colonial integration," Min Jun said as he took his seat. "Complete success," replied Admiral Yoon. "The last refugee families from the outer colonies have been settled in the underground cities. Total population is now 8 billion, all safely hidden below ground or on the dark sides of moons." Min Jun nodded. The evacuation had been horrible, but it had also been a miracle. Every human had made it home. More importantly, they had brought with them knowledge and experience from dozens of different worlds. "Construction update?" Min Jun asked. "Mining operations on Pluto are ahead of schedule," said Yoon. "We've hollowed out 3 more asteroids for shipyards. The aliens scan us every few months, but they only see what we want them to see. Empty space and dead rock. Above ground, Earth looked like a dying world. The aliens had expected humanity to fade away, maybe fight among themselves for the remaining resources. Instead, humans had dug deep. Entire cities existed miles below the surface. Farms grew food under artificial suns. Factories built weapons and ships in chambers carved from solid rock. "What about the fleet?" Min Jun asked. Admiral Yoon smiled. 2,000 ships completed, another 500 under construction. We've been testing the new engines in the asteroid belt. No alien sensors can detect them when they're powered down. The ships were unlike anything humans had built before. Using the alien technology that Lee Tae-woo had stolen 50 years ago, human engineers had created vessels that could hide in space like ghosts. They used new forms of energy that the aliens had never seen. "Dr. Bae, how is the special project going?" Min Jun asked. Bae Sung-ho leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "We had another breakthrough last week. The dimensional phasing technology is working better than we hoped." "Explain it simply," Min Jun said. "Think of space like a piece of paper," Bae said, holding up a sheet. "The aliens built their barrier on this paper, but we've learned to fold the paper to move through dimensions they don't know about." He demonstrated by folding the paper and pushing a pen through it without touching the surface. "Our test probe made it past the barrier 3 days ago," Bae continued. "It's sending back data from the Alpha Centauri system right now." The room fell silent. For 50 years, humanity had been blind to what was happening in the galaxy. Now, finally, they could see again. "What did the probe find?" Min-Jun asked. "Interesting changes," Bei replied, activating a holographic display. "The galaxy is not as peaceful as the aliens claimed it would be without us." The display showed star maps marked with red zones. The Vorthak Empire has expanded into 3 former neutral systems. The Chitrak homeworld is under military occupation. There are signs of forced labor camps on at least 6 worlds. Admiral Yoon frowned. "They told us that removing humans would bring peace to the galaxy." "They lied," Min-Jun said simply. "Without us to compete with, the strongest aliens have become bullies." "There's more," Bei said. "Our probe detected Etherian ships hiding in asteroid fields. They appear to be refugees from their own homeworld." Min-Jun remembered his grandfather's stories about the Etherian delegate who had tried to help. The peaceful species was paying the price for their kindness. How many more? "Probes can we send?" Min-Jun asked. "We can have 50 operating within a month," Bei replied. "Small, undetectable, sending information back through dimensional channels." "Do it," Min-Jun ordered. "I want to know everything that's happening out there." Admiral Yoon cleared her throat. "Sir, the fleet commanders are asking when we might begin active operations." Min-Jun was quiet for a long moment. For 50 years, humanity had been building and planning. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was ready for the day when they would return to the galaxy. But timing was everything. "Not yet," he said finally. "We get stronger every day. Every month we wait. We have more ships, better weapons, more soldiers. Our enemies think we're trapped and helpless. Let them keep thinking that." "But, sir," said a general from the back of the room, "our people are eager to fight. They remember the colonies, the homes they lost." "And they will have their chance," Min-Jun replied. "But when we move, it will be with such force that the aliens will never recover. We will not just win. We will reshape the galaxy." After the meeting, Min-Jun walked through the underground passages of Geneva Base. Through reinforced windows, he could see workers building new ships in vast caverns. Engineers tested weapons that could crack moons in half. Soldiers trained in gravity chambers for battles on worlds they had never seen. He stopped at a memorial wall covered with names. These were the humans who had died during the evacuation, the old and sick who could not survive the journey home. At the top of the wall were words his grandfather had spoken on his deathbed. "They think exile is our punishment. They will learn it was their mistake." Min-Jun touched the wall gently. Soon, very soon, those words would prove true. In the depths of space, invisible probes slipped past alien patrols like whispers in the dark. They carried no weapons, posed no threat. They simply watched and recorded and sent their information home. The aliens had no idea they were being studied. They had no idea that humanity was coming back. They had no idea that their 50 years of peace were about to end forever. Minjun smiled as he walked back to his office. The long exile was almost over. Captain Han Ji-woo checked his instruments one final time. The small ship Silent Thunder hung in space near the edge of the Sol system, invisible to alien sensors. Behind him sat two other crew members. Oh Ye-jin, the best reconnaissance specialist in the human fleet, and Kang Do-hyun, a tactical officer whose family had been killed during the evacuation 50 years ago. "Dimensional phasing system is ready," reported Ye-jin from her station. Her fingers moved across controls that would have been impossible to understand before the exile. Human technology had grown far beyond what the aliens remembered. "All weapons powered down," added Do-hyun. "We're running silent as a ghost." Han Ji-woo nodded. This would be the first manned mission beyond the barrier since the evacuation. 50 years of preparation had led to this moment. "Begin the phase," he ordered. The ship seemed to shimmer and fade. Reality bent around them as they slipped through dimensions the aliens had never learned to see. For a moment, Ji-woo felt like he was falling through empty space. Then the feeling passed, and they were free. "We're through," Ye-jin announced quietly. "No alarms, no pursuit. They have no idea we're here." Through the view screen, Ji-woo could see stars that had been hidden from human eyes for half a century. The nearest was Proxima Centauri, where humans had once built a small research station. "Take us to the old mining colony on Kepler 442b, Ji-woo ordered. "Let's see what 50 years of alien rule looks like." The journey took 3 days using their new engines. When they arrived, the crew stared in shock. The human colony was gone, replaced by massive strip mining operations. Vorthak ships moved in and out of the atmosphere, carrying precious metals to unknown destinations. "Those aren't just mining ships," Do-hyun observed, studying the alien vessels through the ship's sensors. "Those are slave transports." Ye-jin enhanced the image. On the planet's surface, they could see work camps surrounded by energy fences. Thousands of beings moved like ants between the mines and processing centers. "Are those Etherians?" Ji-woo asked, focusing on a group of pale, ghostly figures. "Yes," Ye-jin confirmed. "And Chitrak and Milani, and at least 3 other species. The Vorthak are using them as forced labor." Ji-woo felt sick. The peaceful Etherians had always been friends to humanity. Now they were slaves, working in mines, on what had once been human territory. "Record everything," he ordered. "Command needs to see this." For the next 2 weeks, the Silent Thunder visited 12 former human colonies. The story was the same everywhere: Vorthak occupation, slave labor, and stripped resources. The aliens had not just expelled humanity, they had stolen everything humans had built. On the moon of Titan 7th, they found something even worse. A Vorthak research facility was experimenting on captured aliens, trying to understand how different species could be controlled more effectively. "This is a prison, not a laboratory," Ye-jin whispered as she recorded the images. Do-hyun's hands clenched into fists. "My sister helped build the first settlement on this moon. She was so proud of the gardens they planted. Now those gardens were gone, replaced by sterile metal buildings and guard towers. But the mission brought good news too. Not all aliens supported what was happening. On the fourth world they visited, they detected coded transmissions between resistance groups. The messages were careful and hidden, but Ye-Jin was skilled at finding secrets. The Etherian refugees are trying to coordinate with Chitrak rebels, she reported. They're planning to sabotage Vorthak supply lines. Are they succeeding? Jiwoo asked. Small victories. A destroyed convoy here, a damaged mining station there. But they're poorly organized and lack proper weapons. Jiwoo made a decision that would change everything. Open a communication channel, narrow beam, maximum encryption. Sir? Ye-Jin looked confused. Our orders were to observe only. Sometimes orders need to be flexible, Jiwoo replied. The first contact was with an Etherian called Veltar, who commanded a small group of refugees hiding in the asteroid belt around Kepler 438. When the alien's ghostly face appeared on their screen, his expression showed shock and fear. Impossible, Veltar whispered. Humans cannot be here. The barrier is not as strong as they think, Jiwoo replied carefully. We remember that your people tried to help us during the expulsion. Veltar's form flickered with what might have been hope. We have paid for that choice. Our homeworld is now a Vorthak slave camp. Most of my people are dead or imprisoned. Tell us about the resistance, Jiwoo said. Over the next hour, Veltar explained the situation. The Galactic Council had fallen, apart within 10 years of humanity's expulsion. The Vorthak had used their military strength to take control, claiming they were maintaining order. Species that resisted were crushed. Those that submitted became slaves or junior partners. The Chitrak fight back when they can, Veltar explained. Their homeworld is occupied, but many escape to the outer systems. They conduct raids against Vorthak transports. What about the others? Ye-Jin asked. The Luminar allied themselves with the Vorthak in exchange for autonomy in their home system. The Milani and Draxi were conquered. The smaller species, most are extinct. Do-Hyun leaned forward. What about weapons? Technology? Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. We fight with outdated guns and stolen Vorthak equipment. The Council's technology-sharing programs ended when humans left. Innovation stopped. Progress stopped. We use the same weapons and ships we had 50 years ago. Jiwoo exchanged glances with his crew. While humanity had spent 50 years advancing, their enemies had grown stagnant and lazy. We may be able to help, Jiwoo said carefully. But first, we need to know more about Vorthak military positions, patrol routes, supply lines. You plan to fight them? Veltar asked. Maybe, but we need information first. Over the following weeks, the Silent Thunder met with other resistance leaders. A Chitrak commander named Zixra provided detailed maps of Vorthak military installations. A group of enslaved Draxi engineers explained weaknesses in Vorthak ship designs. Each meeting was dangerous. If the Vorthak discovered that humans had returned, they might attack Earth before humanity was ready. But the intelligence they gathered was priceless. Their main weakness is overconfidence, Do-Hyun concluded as they prepared to return home. They've had no real opposition for decades. Their patrols are lazy, their defenses are outdated, and they don't expect attacks. More importantly, added Yejin, they have enemies everywhere. Half the galaxy hates them, but they're too scattered and weak to fight back effectively. Ji Woo smiled as he set course for home. The aliens had thought that expelling humanity would solve their problems. Instead, they had created a much bigger problem for themselves. When the silent thunder phased back through the barrier around Seoul, they carried more than just intelligence. They carried hope. The galaxy was not lost. There were allies waiting, friends who remembered humanity's kindness. The long exile was ending. Soon, very soon, humanity would return to the stars, and this time, they would not be alone. Lim Soo-jin materialized inside the abandoned mining station like a ghost stepping out of the shadows. The dimensional phase technology still felt strange, but she had learned to trust it completely. Around her, the empty corridors echoed with the silence of 50 years. This had once been Human Mining Station Delta 7, built around a rich asteroid in the Vega system. Now it served as a secret meeting place for the growing resistance network. "Welcome back," said Veltar, the Etherean resistance leader. His ghostly form shimmered in the dim emergency lighting. "The others are waiting." Soo-jin followed him through the station's corridors to what had once been the main conference room. Inside, representatives from 6 alien species sat around, a holographic display table. Each face showed the strain of living under Vorthak rule. "Friends," Soo-jin said, taking her place at the table, "I bring news from humanity." The Chitrak commander Zixra clicked her mandibles nervously. "More promises of future help? Our people die every day in the labor camps." "No promises," Soo-jin replied. "Action?" She activated a small device, and the holographic display showed a detailed map of the Rigel system. 3 days ago, human operatives destroyed the main Vorthak supply depot here. The explosion was made to look like an internal accident. The room fell silent. A Draxi engineer named Korvan leaned forward, his scaled face showing disbelief. "Impossible. That depot was heavily guarded. Our people are very good at being invisible," Soo-jin said with a small smile. "The Vorthak never saw them coming." She changed the display to show another star system. "Yesterday, the main communication relay in the Altair sector went offline. Again, it appeared to be a technical failure." "But how?" asked Veltar. "Your people have been imprisoned in the Sol system for 50 years. Soo-jin had been wondering how much to reveal. The decision was made for her when Park Kyung-soo phased into existence beside her chair. The covert operations specialist looked tired but satisfied. "Sorry I'm late," he said, taking a seat. "Had to make sure no one followed me from the Procyon raid." The aliens stared at him in amazement. Zixra was the first to speak. You just appeared from nowhere." "Dimensional phasing," Kyung-soo explained simply. "Humans learned some new tricks during our exile." He activated his own holographic display. "The Procyon ammunition depot is now a crater. The Vorthak will blame it on faulty storage protocols." Over the next hour, Soo-jin and Kyung-soo explained how human agents had been operating throughout Vorthak space for months, Small teams used dimensional phasing to slip past all defenses, strike at key targets, and vanish without a trace. Every operation is designed to look like an accident or internal sabotage, Sujin explained. The Vorthak suspect their own people are betraying them. Trust is breaking down in their ranks. The alien representatives exchanged glances. Hope was a dangerous thing for enslaved peoples, but it was growing in their eyes. "What do you want from us?" asked Korvan. "Information," Sujin replied. "Patrol schedules, security codes, the locations of important prisoners. You see things that our scouts cannot." "And in return?" Zixra asked. Kyung-Su smiled. "We make the Vorthak's lives very uncomfortable." From another part of the galaxy, Nam Yun-Young was establishing humanity's greatest achievement, a quantum communication network that connected every resistance cell across hundreds of light years. The young woman worked from a hidden base on the dark side of Pluto, her fingers dancing across controls that would have been impossible to build before humanity's exile. "Network Node 17 is online," she reported to her assistant. "We now have real-time communication with resistance cells in 47 star systems." The technology was based on quantum entanglement principles that the aliens had dismissed as theoretical nonsense during humanity's time in the galactic community. Human scientists had not only made it work, but had found ways to make it undetectable. "Any Vorthak scanning attempts?" her assistant asked. "3 in the last hour," Yun-Young replied. "They're getting suspicious about the coordination between rebel groups, but they still can't detect our signals. The quantum network allowed resistance, operations to be coordinated across vast distances instantly. When Chitrak rebels attacked a supply convoy in one system, Etherian refugees could simultaneously sabotage the replacement depot 200 light-years away." Back on the mining station, Sujin was learning disturbing truths about humanity's expulsion. Veltar had access to old Galactic Council records that told a different story than what the aliens had claimed 50 years ago. "The vote was not unanimous," Veltar explained, showing holographic documents. 7 species voted to expel humanity. 3 voted against. 2 abstained. "But they announced it as 11-0, Sujin said. "The Vorthak threatened the smaller species," Veltar continued. "Vote with us, or face the same treatment as humans." The Draxi tried to resist and were told their homeworld would be accidentally bombarded by meteors. Korvan's scales turned darker with anger. "My people knew this, but we were too afraid to speak." The Chitrak were told that refusing to vote would mean immediate military occupation, added Zixra. "We chose survival over honor." The Etherians abstained because we hoped to find a peaceful solution later, Veltar said sadly. "We planned to negotiate for humanity's return once tensions cooled." "What happened instead?" Sujin asked. Within 5 years, the Vorthak were expanding into former human territory. Within 10 years, they were demanding tribute from smaller species. Within 20 years, the Galactic Council was just a name. The Vorthak Empire controlled everything. Sujin felt cold anger growing in her chest. Humanity had been betrayed, not just by enemies, but by species who should have been friends. "There's more," Veltar continued. The Vorthak have been preparing for humanity's return. They always expected you to try to come back eventually. What kind of preparations? Kyung-Soo asked. Korvan answered. Massive fleets positioned near the Sol system. New weapons designed specifically to counter human technology as they remembered it. Battle plans for attacking Earth directly. They plan to finish what they started 50 years ago, Zixra said grimly. Sujin and Kyung-Soo exchanged glances. The aliens were planning to commit genocide, believing that humanity was still using the same old technology and tactics. They're in for a surprise, Kyung-Soo said quietly. The meeting continued for hours. By the end, they had established communication protocols, sabotage targets, and coordination plans. The resistance was no longer a collection of desperate groups. It was becoming an army. As the alien representatives prepared to leave, Veltar approached Sujin privately. There is something else, he said, something the others do not need to know yet. What? The Vorthak are planning something called the Final Solution. Complete extinction of all non-Vorthak species. They believe the galaxy belongs to them alone. Sujin felt her blood turn to ice. When? Soon. Maybe within a year. They want to eliminate all potential resistance before expanding into new galaxies. As Sujin phased back toward human space, she carried more than intelligence reports. She carried the knowledge that this was no longer about revenge or justice. This was about survival of every non-Vorthak species in the galaxy. The underground network was growing stronger every day, but time was running out faster than anyone had expected. The final war was coming, whether humanity was ready or not. Fleet Admiral Seo Jun-ho stood on the bridge of the massive battleship Retribution, watching the final preparations for humanity's return to the galaxy. Around him, thousands of ships hung in space like sleeping giants. Each vessel represented 50 years of planning, building, and dreaming of this moment. The Galactic Council had finally realized something was wrong. Too many accidents had destroyed Vorthak supply lines. Too many technical failures had disabled their communication networks. Even their simple minds could see the pattern. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from Vorthak High Command, reported Communications Officer Park Hyo-jin. They're ordering all fleets to reinforce the Sol barrier. Too late, Jun-ho said with satisfaction. How long until they reach the barrier? 18 hours at maximum speed, replied his tactical officer. And how long until our attack begins? 6 hours, sir. Jun-ho smiled. For 50 years, humanity had planned this moment with perfect precision. While the Vorthak were rushing ships to protect an empty barrier, the real human fleet would be attacking targets across the galaxy. In the fighter bay, elite pilot Kim Hae-won ran final checks on her spacecraft. The small ship looked nothing like the fighters humanity had used 50 years ago. This vessel could phase through dimensions, become invisible to all sensors, and carry weapons that could destroy ships 10 times its size. Dragon Squadron final. Briefing, she announced to her pilots over the communication system. 12 pilots, the best humanity had ever produced, listened as she explained their mission. They would spearhead the attack on Vorthak Central Command, the massive space station that controlled the entire enemy empire. Remember, "We're not just fighting for revenge," Haywan told them. "We're fighting to free every enslaved species in the galaxy. We're fighting to end 50 years of tyranny." The pilots nodded grimly. Each had lost family during the evacuation. Each had spent their entire adult life preparing for this day. Meanwhile, Strategic Coordinator Jiang Min-woo was orchestrating the most complex military operation in Galactic history from his command center deep inside Pluto. Holographic displays showed the positions of every human ship, every enemy target, and every allied resistance cell. "Phase 1 units, report status," he commanded. Across the galaxy, human strike teams confirmed their readiness. They had been positioning themselves for weeks, using dimensional phasing to slip past enemy defenses. Now they waited in the shadows of 12 star systems, ready to strike at the heart of Vorthak power. "All teams ready," reported the team leaders. "Targets acquired and locked. Resistance networks. Report status," Min-woo continued. Lim Soo-jin's voice came through the quantum communication system from her position near Vega. "All resistance cells are in position. Etherian, Chitrak, and Draxi, forces ready to coordinate with human strikes." "Allied fleet commanders report status," Min-woo called. This was the surprise that would shock the Vorthak most. Not all aliens had submitted to their rule. Hidden fleets of free Chitrak, escaped Etherian refugees, and liberated Draxi colonies had been secretly building their own ships with human help. Chitrak Battle Group. "7 ready," came the clicking voice of Commander Zixra. "Etherian Ghost Fleet standing by," whispered the voice of Veltar. "Draxi Liberation Force armed and eager," growled Corvin. Min-woo felt a moment of pride. Humanity had not just built an army. They had united the galaxy's oppressed peoples into a single force for freedom. "All units," he announced across all channels, "Operation Thunderbolt begins in 60 seconds. The countdown began. In his command center, Min-woo watched displays showing the entire galaxy. In 60 seconds, the Vorthak Empire would face attacks on every major military installation simultaneously. 30 seconds, he announced. On the Retribution, Admiral Jun-ho gave his final order. "All ships, prepare for dimensional phase jump." 10 seconds, Min-woo called out. Across the galaxy, human ships shimmered as their dimensional drives activated. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. The galaxy exploded into warfare. At Vorthak Central Command, Kim Hae-won's Dragon Squadron materialized inside the space station's main hangar. Their weapons fired before the enemy even knew they were there. Within minutes, the station's defenses were crippled. "This is for every human child who died during the evacuation," Hae-won whispered as she targeted the station's main reactor. The explosion could be seen from 3 star systems away. At the Rigel shipyards, Admiral Jun-ho's main fleet appeared like ghosts becoming solid. The massive human battleships opened fire with weapons the Vorthak had never seen. Energy beams that could slice through planets turned the enemy shipyard into scrap metal in minutes. Message to all Vorthak forces. Jun-ho broadcast on all frequencies. Surrender now and face trial for your crimes. Resist and face complete destruction. The Vorthak response was predictable. They attacked with everything they had, expecting to fight the same weak humans they remembered from 50 years ago. Instead, they found an enemy that had surpassed them in every way. Human ships moved like liquid light, appearing and disappearing, at will. Human weapons struck with the force of dying stars. Human tactics were beyond anything the aliens had ever imagined. At the Procyon system, Chitrak rebels struck Vorthak occupation forces from orbit, while human ground teams rescued enslaved workers. The operation was coordinated perfectly, with different species working together as one unified force. "The camps are liberated," reported Zixra. 60,000 Etherian slaves are free. On Kepler 442b, Draxi liberation forces attacked the mining facilities that had once been a human colony. But instead of revenge, they showed mercy. Vorthak workers who surrendered were taken prisoner. Those who fought were eliminated efficiently. "This world remembers human kindness," Korvan announced. "We will not become monsters like our oppressors." Within 6 hours, the Vorthak Empire was in ruins. Their central command was destroyed. Their main fleets were either obliterated or in full retreat. Their occupation forces were surrendering. And Massa-As word spread that resistance was not only possible but successful. But the most shocking moment came when the Vorthak Emperor himself tried to negotiate. "Humans," came the transmission to Admiral Junho. "We can discuss terms. Surely we can reach an agreement that benefits both our species." Junho's response was broadcast across the entire galaxy. 50 years ago, my grandfather Kim Dae-ho stood before your council and begged for mercy. You gave him 30 days to evacuate 2 billion people. You called us a disease that needed to be removed. The transmission paused as Junho looked directly into the camera. Today, you have 30 minutes to surrender unconditionally. After that, we will assume you prefer to face the consequences of your choices. 28 minutes later, the Vorthak Empire officially surrendered. The storm had broken, the galaxy was free, and humanity had kept their promise to return with vengeance. But as Admiral Junho would soon learn, vengeance and justice were not the same thing. The hardest part was still to come. The Great Hall aboard the human flagship Retribution was nothing like the Crystal Palace where humanity had been condemned 50 years ago. Here, representatives from every free species in the galaxy sat as equals around a circular table. No, one species sat higher than the others. No one voice carried more weight than another. Choi Min-jun, now representing humanity as the elected leader of the Galactic Liberation Council, looked around the table at faces that showed hope for the first time in decades. The Vorthak Empire was gone. The old Galactic Council was dissolved. Today, they would decide what came next. "The trials are complete," announced Admiral Yoon Hye-jin from her position as head of the War Crimes Tribunal. "Former Emperor Krekstar and his council have been found guilty of genocide, slavery, and crimes against sapient life." "What is their sentence?" asked Veltar, the Etherian representative. "Life imprisonment on a monitored world," Yoon replied. They will spend their remaining years helping to rebuild what they destroyed. It had been a difficult decision. Many humans wanted the Vorthak leaders executed. Many freed slaves wanted them tortured. But humanity had learned important lessons during their exile. Revenge without justice led only to more suffering. Some of our people are not happy with this decision, said Zixra, speaking for the Chitrak delegation. They wanted blood for blood. Blood for blood is how we got into this mess, Minjun replied gently. The Vorthak believed might made right. If we follow the same path, we become just like them. Dr. Bei Sung-ho stood up from the science delegation. The old man's hair was now completely white, but his eyes still burned with curiosity and hope. The technology sharing program is ready, he announced. Every species will have access to dimensional travel, advanced medicine, and clean energy systems. No one will need to fight over resources again. This had been another difficult decision. Some humans argued that keeping their technological advantages would ensure their safety. But Minjun and his council had decided that security came from cooperation, not domination. There are safeguards, Bei continued. No single species can use this technology to build weapons of mass destruction. The systems are designed to shut down if misused. What about governance? Asked Korvan, representing the liberated Draxi worlds. Minjun activated a holographic display showing the new galactic structure. The Galactic Liberation Council will have representatives from every species. Decisions affecting multiple worlds require majority vote. No species can be outvoted on matters affecting only their own people. And what about disputes? Asked a representative from the Milani, who had been freed from Vorthak slavery just weeks before. Peaceful arbitration, replied Admiral Yoon. We've established courts with judges from multiple species. Violence will be the last resort, not the first. As the meeting continued, Minjun thought about his grandfather Kim Dae-ho, who had tried so desperately to find a peaceful solution 50 years ago. The old diplomat had died believing he had failed. He never knew that his failure had become humanity's greatest success. The forced exile had taught humanity patience, unity, and the value of preparation. More importantly, it had taught them empathy for other oppressed peoples. Humans could have returned as conquerors. Instead, they had chosen to return as liberators. There is one more matter, said Veltar, his ghostly form flickering with what might have been nervousness. The worlds that supported the original expulsion. What happens to them? The room fell silent. The Luminar had allied with the Vorthak. Several smaller species had voted to exile humanity out of fear. What justice did they deserve? They will be welcomed as equals, Minjun said simply, if they wish to join the new order. But they betrayed you, protested Zixra. They supported your exile. They were afraid, Minjun replied. Fear makes people do terrible things. We cannot punish them for being victims of Vorthak threats. It was Bei Sung-ho who provided the most compelling argument. During our exile, we learned that holding on to anger only makes you bitter. These species have suffered under Vorthak rule, just like everyone else. They deserve a chance at freedom. The vote was close, but mercy won. Former enemies would be offered the same opportunities as former allies. The galaxy would heal together, or not at all. As the formal session ended, Min-Jun found himself standing alone at the observation deck, looking out at the fleet of ships from dozens of species. Human vessels flew alongside Chitrak fighters and Etherian scouts. Former enemies worked together to patrol liberated systems. Admiral Yoon joined him at the window. "Do you think it will work?" she asked. "This new order we're building?" "It has to," Min-Jun replied. "The alternative is another 50 years of war and oppression." The Vorthak spent generations believing they were superior to everyone else, Yoon observed. "We could have made the same mistake." "That's why we won't rule alone," Min-Jun said. "Power shared is power that cannot corrupt." In the weeks that followed, the new galactic government began to take shape. Humans led many of the initial efforts, but leadership was quickly distributed among all species. The Etherians, with their natural diplomatic skills, became mediators for disputes. The Chitrak, with their engineering knowledge, led reconstruction efforts. The Draxi, with their analytical minds, designed new economic systems that benefited everyone. Former Vorthak worlds were not abandoned or punished. Instead, they received the same aid as everyone else. Some Vorthak citizens, especially the younger ones, embraced the new order eagerly. Others remained bitter and resentful. Time would tell which attitude would prevail. The old human colonies were rebuilt, but not as purely human settlements. They became multicultural worlds where different species could live and work together. The gardens that Kang Do-hyun's sister had once planted on Titan 7 were restored, but now they included plants from a dozen different worlds. 6 months after the liberation, Min-Jun received a message that brought tears to his eyes. It was from a young Vorthak named Keswin, who had been born during humanity's exile and had never known the old empire's propaganda. "Thank you for showing us that there is another way to live," the message said. "My people forgot that strength comes from helping others, not hurting them. We want to learn from your example." As Min-Jun stood in his office looking at reports of successful cooperation between former enemies, he realized that humanity's greatest victory was not military. It was proving that a better way was possible. The galaxy that had once expelled humans as a threat now looked to them for leadership. But humanity had learned to share that leadership, to build bridges instead of walls, to choose cooperation over domination. 50 years of exile had ended. The age of freedom had begun, and somewhere in the vast memorial gardens of New Geneva Station, a simple plaque honored Kim Dae-ho and all those who had died during the evacuation. The inscription read, "They thought exile was our ending. It became our beginning." The stars that had once been forbidden to humanity now welcomed them home, and this time they brought the entire galaxy with them.